These are the hottest names in fantasy football, and we're going to tell you what to do with them as we get closer to the playoffs. You're going to need to make sure that you get the guys off your roster that are sells and get the guys on your roster that you could be taking advantage of and buying. Buy, sell, hold starts with Quinshon Judkins today, or as every NFL announcer calls him, Quinshon Judkins, which... how do we know better than them? I don't know. But with Mr. Judkins here, looking at his volume yesterday in particular, in this game against the Miami Dolphins, which was extremely lopsided, what you've seen with Judkins is you continue to see, in terms of running back targets, I kind of want to start here. There's only 3 running back targets in this game total. Ford got 2 of them, Sampson got 1, and Judkins got 0. And we continue to say that Quinshon Judkins is not going to be the receiving back in this Cleveland Browns offense. The problem is it doesn't really matter, right? When you're looking at overall snaps, it's 37 to 13 to 9, okay? And when you're looking at rushing attempts, 25 to 3 to 1. So, I mean, they're just giving him as many carries as he can handle, and he's coming off a game where he had 3 rushing touchdowns. Now, he had 84 yards on 25 attempts, so you're doing the math of the efficiency there. It's under 3 yards per carry, under 4 yards per carry. It's not great.
Nope.
However, the touchdowns and the guaranteed volume is going to get him a certain amount of points every week. It makes him a very high floor player, albeit in a very bad offense. And that's kind of where I want to go with my next point here. Do you sell high on Quinshon Judkins because he did just come off a game where he's not going to, again, score 3 touchdowns. It's just straight up not happening. So do you sell high? When you're looking at the overall offensive rating so far throughout the season for the Browns, they are 32nd on PFF, the 32nd overall graded offense in the NFL. And they played the Miami Dolphins. And the fact of the matter is, Miami is a team, when you're looking at them giving up points to running backs all season, they have been an absolute slam dunk matchup for every running back. Look at what Rico Dowdle did to them a couple weeks ago. I mean, I think next week it's the Falcons. You're starting Tyler Algier next week in your flex spot. Like, not even joking. And so when you're considering that they have, again, the 32nd ranked PFF offense. In terms of their rushing offense, they do jump up to 17th, but it doesn't matter because more often than not, with a quarterback like Dylan Gabriel right now, or if they ever put Shedeur in there, they are going to be straight up downright screwed. There's almost never going to be a game where they're leading like this one, where they're going to run the ball over and over and over with Quinshon Judkins. I do think you're probably saw what you saw yesterday was probably the peak of his ceiling for fantasy football this year with as bad of an offense is going to be. I don't think it's going to get much better than this.
I agree with you. And
so it's all going to depend on what kind of prices you're able to sell him for. I'm going to go soft sell though, aka shop. I think, if you're not selling low, you're not taking, nothing for him. You have to get a really good return on Quinshon Judkins. I'm just going to type Quinshon into the trade finder real quick and see what we got. Yeah, so somebody traded Quinshon for Garrett Wilson and Kyron Williams. If you can afford to hold Garrett, I would definitely make that deal. Somebody moved him straight up for Henry. That's kind of a wash in my eyes. I'd probably still prefer Judkins there, to be honest with you.
Henry.
You would prefer Henry rest of the season than Judkins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the ultimate Judkins truther,
you have both of them,
and I am very realistic with what Quinshon's outlook is going to be rest of the season, and I think it's going to be pretty shaky, honestly, as bad as that offense is.
I mean, you've got one where somebody moved Keenan and J.K. Dobbins for Judkins, and obviously you would take the Judkins side there.
Yeah.
I would still take him over guys like Kenneth Walker, but in terms of like what you can realistically, let's just go ahead and look at the rest of season ranks on the site. Where Quinshon Judkins is ranked, he's ranked around guys now like Cam Skattebo. He's ranked 1 spot ahead of Cam Skattebo.
I would him easily take Skattebo. I have Quinshon ranked as running back 15 rest of the season, which I don't think is aggressively low necessarily when you're talking about a tier of guys that is Skattebo, Kyron, Genty, Irving, and Henry, and every single one of those running backs I would prefer and take over Judkins because of their individual situations.
So with Kyron Williams as well, we had him in our buys video. He could be somebody that if you can move Judkins for Kyron, I would do it. I don't know how much is happening, but if you could at least try, in casual leagues especially. Bucky Irving, if somebody needs to desperately move Bucky, maybe you could get that one done. But again, Cam Skattebo is the most notable example in my opinion. You're getting to the point also where Jaylen Warren plus might be a good option for Quinshon Judkins with as good as Jaylen Warren looks recently and also getting the same amount of volume and a slightly better offense. And so there's a lot of options from a trade perspective there, but I'm going to say soft sell. The reason it's a soft sell, again, do not sell low on Quinshon Judkins, but you should shop him and see if you can get like a crazy good return one that's going to help. Or you use Quinshon to maybe consolidate. Maybe you up tier, you take Quinshon plus, and you try to get into that like Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, James Cook tier and see if you can go with that. I do think he's somebody you should be shopping though. I don't know what your verdict is. I'm assuming it's about the same.
I'm the same as you. I'm soft sell.
Okay. Yeah.
T. Higgins is a guy that I think is definitely worth talking about because he's been a mover up rankings of recent with 2 solid games. One of them very good. The other one not as good it was like 11 points, but again, he didn't have a touchdown. So with T. Higgins at the moment, again, he's a wide receiver 2, going to be ranked kind of in the wide receiver 2 range with a bunch of other guys that are going to be in crowded offenses. So like Lab McConkey, for example, pretty close to T. Higgins, Quentin Johnston, the same thing, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, Jamison Williams, right? Terry McLaurin also there. He's kind of down there in that range because he's been injured, banged up. With Higgins now that Flacco is quarterback there and Jamar Chase going bananas, I'm kind of on the fence on what to do with T. Higgins because I could see both sides. I have been offered in a league a like Addison for Higgins swap, and I think in that sort of scenario, I would rather just take the wide receiver in an offense that's going to have more passing volume long term than a guy like Addison, where it's probably going to go down. So if you can pivot from one wide receiver 2 in that value range to another wide receiver 2 that has more passing volume, right, then you can take the shot on Higgins. I'm totally fine with that because all those guys in that range are going to be boom busts anyways. If you can, again, if you're in a situation where you're like 500 at the lowest or above, and you can afford the bye week of T. Higgins, because like that's one advantage. That's pretty much the only advantage that Addison has over Higgins is he's not missing time the rest of the season unless he gets injured. Higgins will have a bye week, which could hurt you if you're like below 500. So you might not be able to afford to make that type of move. But this is one where I think like ultimately, again, depending on who you get here, I would go ahead and pivot to him. Again, if you're moving from a wide receiver 2 in a worse offense to him, or you just hold and you don't really do anything with Higgins or you don't pursue him or anything. If you're moving like a wide receiver 1 in, say, a less ideal situation, but they still have higher upside, I think, on a week-to-week basis. Like, would you prefer, as a Michael Pittman owner yourself in the Flock League, if you were offered Higgins for Pittman straight up, would you take Higgins or would you just stick with Pittman?
I look at it as a pretty lateral move. I'd probably stick with Pittman.
I think I would too.
It's a much better offense. So like,
which ultimately to me means like I would probably lean hold because it's like half the guys in that tier with Higgins. I think
so because you know what Higgins' upside is like, and his upside's inherently raised not only with Joe Flacco at quarterback, but if Joe Burrow does come back as well. Like, I mean, T. Higgins, it took 1 week last year for him to really pay off for me. Like he won me the Flock League because of his 40-point game. And he has that upside every week. He didn't necessarily have it without Flacco, but I think he does have it with Flacco. And so with where you drafted T. Higgins, it kind of sucks because you drafted him in the 3rd round this year, whereas I got him.
He's not paying off at that price.
No, he's not going to. And I don't think if you're trading him now, I don't think he's going to pay off anyways. And so I would probably say hold as well for T. Higgins. I think that's probably the smart thing to do. And just see if he can, end up returning on value at all. This is interesting. So Travis Hunter, we need to go a little bit more in depth on this one, and I'm going to pull up some resources here that I found. So Hunter obviously has the big story has been, his usage on offense and his routes run on offense have been fluctuating quite a bit. And so it's kind of been one of those things where we weren't sure how much he was going to be staying on defense and if he was going to be getting more route participation on offense. Well, let's look at his route participation over the last 5 games. It goes from week 3 on. Week 3, 63%. Week 4, 74%. 74% in week 5. 88% in week 6. And 90% in week 7. Okay. So he's gone up about 30% progressively over the past 5 weeks of NFL football. And you see him now at a 90% route participation. They are clearly starting to utilize him more as a wide receiver in that offense. And you saw in week 7, he had 24.1 fantasy points and a 30% target share. According to Matt Harmon on Twitter or X, he lined up 41% of the time outside and 60% of the time in the slot. And so these are all pretty good metrics for his long-term usage in that Jacksonville offense. Not to mention, Brian Thomas Jr. did get hurt yesterday. I haven't necessarily seen if it's going to be a long-term injury, but I haven't heard anything like that. I'm going to assume it's going to be a short-term injury. That
injury, the way he reacted and the way he was holding, like carrying himself, it looked very similar to Worthy's injury.
Okay,
like where he was just like dangling. He couldn't really move it or anything. So hopefully it's not something as serious or more serious than what Worthy had, but like hopefully you could play through it.
So I think worst case scenario though, Travis Hunter, they have their bye this week, and so that honestly might lean towards Brian Thomas Jr. being back after the bye anyways. But you come out of week 9, you have Vegas, Houston, the Chargers, Arizona, and Tennessee, and the Colts. That's a pretty darn good stretch of game for the Jaguars wide receivers there. And so I think with the utilization trending up, I think with the fact that you drafted him in the top 8 rounds at least, Travis Hunter, And the fact that he's such a kind of an unknown talent, he's getting the right utilization from an alignment standpoint as well that we like to see for his long-term outlook. His targets has continued to creep up. I don't think he's going to get 14 targets every week. I don't think you're going to have Brian Thomas Jr. getting hurt every week and you being down by 20 in London. Like, that's just, it's a unique set of circumstances, but you can't deny the snap percentage has gone up. The route participation has gone up. The alignment, he's playing 60% of his snaps in the slot, which is where we like to see him at. I do think the targets have a chance to, and the receptions have a chance to keep ticking up and just kind of staying at a consistent level. This is his first 100-yard game in the NFL. This was really the first flash we saw, and I don't think they're going to be playing from behind every week, but I think because of the upside, I think you would be kind of stupid to sell him off after this. I think you have to hold because you really don't know what his ceiling is. It's Travis Hunter. Like, we have no clue what his ceiling could be in this offense, and I'm willing to just take at this point, if you are a contending team and you have Travis Hunter, look, maybe if you're rebuilding, reloading, or sorry, not rebuilding, reloading, that's a dynasty mode. Maybe if you're, on the fence and you're like trying to get back on track, or you are like about to lose your fantasy team, maybe you try to trade him for an upside guy. I don't think his price is going. I don't think everybody in the world is Danny and ranking him at wide receiver 24 rest of the season.
Right.
So
I mean, when you look at the expert consensus right now, he's right around Pearsall, Diggs, J-Mo, Wandell, Golden, which is very reasonable.
That is reasonable.
Keenan Allen.
That is reasonable.
So,
probably not enough. I do think he has more upside than most of those guys. And so I'm going to say probably hold for Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I agree. I would go hold as well. Next guy that we've got here is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift coming off of two of the best weeks that we've ever seen him play, again, with the Chicago Bears and this Ben Johnson offense. And we kind of suspected that this was going to come. I think we alluded to a couple of weeks ago that Swift had a really, really good schedule for running back specifically. And generally every year you see a really nice stretch, a really nice tear for Swift to just go off for like a 4 to 6 week stretch. And the rest of the season he's kind of iffy. But again, we're right in the middle of this really nice schedule for the Bears as a whole, and Swift specifically, where he can continue to produce at a really high level. And we did mention Kyle Monangai as like a potential waiver pickup in this week's playbook. But really, when you look at the way Monangai was getting utilized in that offense, again, he was kind of getting carries towards the end of the game when they had the lead over New Orleans. We're trying to sustain it. Swift was definitely the more explosive, more consistent guy there. He definitely seems to be the lead running back there who consistently gets like 15 plus touches a game. And I don't think that's going to go down with the success that he's having right now. All that to say, with Swift at the moment, when you look at expert consensus rankings where he's being priced, it's right back to back with JCM, Alvin Kamara, J.K. Dobbins, David Montgomery, Kenneth Walker, Chase Brown. I would take I would take Swift over any one of those guys. If you get up to Jaylen Warren versus DeAndre Swift, I think I would still give the upper hand to DeAndre Swift because they're both kind of like up and down. They're not necessarily like crazy alpha running backs that are going to just be dominant all season. But DeAndre Swift does have higher upside than Jaylen Warren does on a week-to-week basis, and he's in a better offense rest of the season. At this point, Swift versus Breece Hall is very close. Swift versus ETN is very close. These are guys that are consistently ranked over Swift, where I think he should be in that tier with those guys, but he's not even viewed in that tier with those guys yet, whereas I think he should be. At the moment with Swift's price or with Swift's production the last couple of weeks, I don't know if you can necessarily invest in him at the moment for like a reasonable price. You might have people that own him that are trying to like quote unquote sell high. And if they try to get a guy like Breece Hall, Jaylen Warren, ETN, I honestly don't mind if you just do that pivot to go get DeAndre Swift. I don't think, again, with his highly productive weeks that you're going to be able to give up a JCM, a Kamara, a Dobbins, or a Amani, but if that's available to you, then go for it. But I think all that to say, I'm probably leaning just in general like a hold with DeAndre Swift. I'm not selling high on DeAndre Swift. I think, again, he's in the middle of like the best possible schedule stretch for his production over the next, still I think carrying over for like 3 or 4 more weeks.
Yes,
before we even like reevaluate his outlook. But I don't necessarily think this is going to stop anytime soon.
No, I don't either. So what's your verdict?
Hold.
Yeah, I would say soft buy, but I know the comment we'll get is you can't buy him.
Right, exactly. So, that's what I was saying. Like, yeah. I would say soft buy because I do honestly prefer him over Warren, Breece, and ETN right now. Too. But I don't know if you can do that.
I don't know either. If you can do it, I think Nathan kind of nailed it. I'll say hold as well. But he's definitely not a sell because of his upcoming schedule. The next 3 weeks are dynamite for him. If anything, you're buying him now, and maybe you can move off of him later after he looks like a rest of the season amazing,
like top 12 back.
When in reality he plays Green Bay in week 14, Cleveland in week 15, Green Bay again in week 16,
playoff schedule,
and San Francisco.
He's going to be the hardest of sells heading into your playoff schedule.
And so for that reason, maybe we do go hold. Like maybe you don't buy him now. You hold him if you have him, you hold him through the schedule, and then you sell him after that. Like I think you've got 3 really good weeks now, 3 really bad weeks at the end of the season that you need to kind of pay attention to. So if you'd like to see our rest of season rankings, we're updating them every day on the site. Also, you have our weekly rankings on there. You can use the trade calculator to make these trades and not ruin your fantasy football team. Always check with something at least. And then you can also use our My Teams tool where you can plug your team in and see where you rank rest of the season. It's all free. Got the link in the comments. Pinned comment. Just click on that link. Create an account with code domain. Free. Doesn't cost anything. Boom, you get to use all of it. So go check that out. They're honestly great tools that can help you win your league. All right, let's pivot to Jordan Addison. This one's interesting. Nate owns Jordan Addison in the Flock League. I'm curious what he's thinking. Since Jordan Addison has come back 15, 15, and 21 points. He had 12 targets, 9 receptions for 128 yards against Philadelphia. Addison continues to just always be productive. Like that is just what Jordan Addison is. He's just a productive wide receiver. The problem is this. A lot of people are going to be looking at the J.J. McCarthy situation there in Minnesota and kind of projecting that Jordan Addison is going to take a huge hit, and I kind of agree with that. Now, it's going to be largely dependent on his price, like it is with almost anybody, right? And so when you're looking at the expert consensus rankings for wide receivers over on the site and where Jordan Addison actually is rest of the season, I mean, he's right next to guys like Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Xavier Worthy. Jalen Waddle's not too far ahead. I would probably take all of these guys over him pretty easily. Mm-hmm. The guys behind him, I mean, they're all upside shots. Keenan Allen, I wouldn't take over Jordan Addison. I probably would prefer Jordan Addison there. Jordan Addison's fighting with Jefferson. Allen's fighting with Ladd and QJ. But like guys like Terry McLaurin, I think that could be a good opportunity to pivot off of Addison for McLaurin and I think McLaurin is being undervalued in a lot of fantasy circles right now. I think people are underestimating just how productive he could be at the end of the year. Obviously, it's Jaden Daniels dependent, but I mean, the notion that, with the Terry McLaurin, that we're going to prefer a lot of these guys very similarly, like Ricky Pearsall, like it's not even a question if I'm heavily contending and if I'm, I have 1 or 2 losses, I would much rather have Terry for my playoffs. And so, so that could be a good move. Stephon Diggs, Ricky Pearsall, Jameson Williams, all those guys have just as many questions as Addison. But regardless, again, I think the boogeyman here is J.J. McCarthy. And ultimately, for me, what I saw in the first couple of weeks with J.J. McCarthy is not great. He passed the ball 20 and 21 times in those games. He had 11 and 13 completions total against Chicago and Atlanta. Obviously, they come back in week 8 and they have the Chargers this week. They've got Detroit in week 9, Baltimore in week 10, and Chicago in week 11.
Mixed bag.
Yeah, it is a mixed bag. I just don't trust McCarthy. I just
yeah,
don't.
And that's the thing that sucks too is like Wentz looks bad enough that they will 100% start JJ McCarthy once he's back healthy and give him another chance because Wentz again has cost him a couple of games, but that volume that Wentz provides in 2 of those 3 games that he started has barely gotten Addison to double digits, and they've come in like last second, fourth quarter. Like prayers essentially, where he had that big play across the pond against Pittsburgh that got him up to like 15 points within the last 2 minutes of the game, and then the last second touchdown which got him up to like 13 14 points in that game as well. So
I guess the question is, when you look at the week 14 through 17 stretch here with playing Washington in week 14, Dallas in week 15, the Giants in week 16, is that enough to hold Jordan Addison? Like that's kind of the thing. It's like he has a dynamite playoff schedule. Yeah. If JJ McCarthy can put it together even a little bit, you're looking at him as a potential guy that you could flex and feel very good about because he's going to be in a lot of high scoring matchups at the end of the year here.
I would say very similar things to Addison that I said to Higgins. If you can get a situational 1 in exchange for Addison, like a Waddle, like getting Waddle at a discount, then I would capitalize on that. If you gave me Pittman right now and I gave you Addison, I would take Pittman. And DK Metcalf as well, right? The same thing, because those guys all have the same floor as Addison does in situations where there's just more passing volume to go around. And oh, by the way, they're all the number 1 in their offense.
Yeah. So I've talked myself out of it a little bit. I mean, I just don't know. The problem is, I think from a ranking standpoint, I don't think he's going high enough to where it's like he's an obvious.
Here's the thing with Addison. If you held Addison, I wouldn't blame you for it because somehow every single year Addison just finds a way to produce.
He does. He just produces.
He just finds a way. And sometimes it's at the expense of Jefferson in some games, like it was this past week where he out-targeted Jefferson, out-produced him and everything.
Yep.
So, who knows? Who knows? I think because of that, I would lean hold with Addison again, unless you can get a number one in that same price range.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of there as well. I'm going to say hold. It's kind of a cop out, but I love the playoff schedule for Jordan Addison. We do have to be thinking about that right now.
Yeah.
All right, another wide receiver two.
George Pickens. Like Avery said, another wide receiver two here. Wanted to have this conversation because we now have seen a game where Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, and Pickens are all playing at the same time. And again, this is like after George Pickens just went totally bananas with no CDs. So everyone was kind of curious to see if Pickens was going to go back to what he was previously. Interestingly enough, there wasn't a ton of passing volume this week because Dak only threw the ball 30 times. They didn't have to throw the ball a ton because they got the lead early against Washington, and then they just sustained it by running the ball a lot. And they gave Jaden Blue actually 7 carries in this game. Garbage time carries, for sure. But CeeDee Lamb, 22 points, 110 yards with only 8 targets. Pickens, 6 targets for 12 points. And then you saw Jake Ferguson. Wow, Jake Ferguson can still produce.
Interesting. With CeeDee Lamb there. Interesting.
What?
No way.
Okay, yeah, so Ferguson also had 22 points as well. In that, 2 touchdowns. He wasn't super efficient with his targets, but he still had 7 catches for 29 yards. That's like Rashee Rice level efficiency with his catches, but it doesn't matter when his usage is coming in the red zone.
You're playing PPR leagues.
You're playing in PPR leagues, and this is great. It just raises his floor very, 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 very much. So with Pickens, I do think you're kind of going to get back to the boom bust type of outlook for him on a week-to-week basis. But hey, in a game script that wasn't super friendly to George Pickens as a wide receiver too in this situation, still had 12 points on 6 receptions, only 4 catches, but he had 82 yards. This is what George Pickens is in this offense, and it is perfect for their offense, not only schematically, but for your fantasy football team. You're feeling good about flexing George Pickens every single week, regardless of whether or not CeeDee Lamb is in that game or not. And that is why he is going to be one of the pricier wide receiver twos in fantasy football right now. ROS will adjust when you're talking about like the expert average on the site because right now Pickens is wide receiver 13. I would assume that goes down below some of these other guys. But if you can move a Deebo Samuel for a George Pickens, I honestly would probably give the upper hand to George Pickens there. If you can move BTJ for George Pickens, that one's closer. BTJ's banged up. That offensive situation is looking worse and worse every single week. That team is looking worse and worse every single week. I might give the upper hand to George Pickens there, honestly. And I rarely say that about moving from a 1 to a 2. QJ for George Pickens. I would rather have George Pickens. Again, I don't know. Because George Pickens is ranked so high currently on the site, and he's viewed so highly in fantasy circles at the moment because of what he was able to do without CeeDee Lamb. Again, it might be tough to get this deal done unless we have one more slow week from George Pickens. Then he might be a bigger buy. So I think I am going to lean hold right now because I still think he's kind of ranked a little too high.
I'm probably going to say hold as well. I think people, again, we gave George Pickens as a sell before this week just for this reason. Like he was always going to be the 2. He was always going to slot back down to the 2 when CD came back. And so, 12 points, look, he didn't even have a touchdown in this game. You're going to see some touchdown regression with George Pickens, but I kind of agree with Nate on this one. I think he's probably, he'll probably settle back down a little bit lower into the wide receiver 2 range here as we go throughout the season. So Kimani Vidal this week regressed quite a bit, and a big reason for this, he played 64% of snaps compared to 67 the week before. So the usage in terms of being on the field compared to the other running backs wasn't much different than it was last week. And so I think a lot of people are going to mistake that for what actually happened, which was that the Colts got up big very quickly. And because they're the best team in the league and they're going to win the Super Bowl, which whatever, that's fine with me if they do. I guess it's okay.
Ain't no way with that secondary.
Freaking, no I know, dude. But 49 snaps compared to Haskins, 25. Nyheim Hines had 10. Scott Matlock had 10 as well. Nyheim Hines had 1. Scott Matlock had 10. So, but only 7.5 fantasy points. He had 9 attempts for 20 yards, not efficient. 4 targets for 15 yards, had 5 of his 7.5 points in the receiving game. And, continued to get the majority of the work there for the LA Chargers. Now, again, when we're looking at last week against who? Who did they play? last week. Who did he have 22 points against, Nate?
Washington?
Nope. Just guess. Who
Wait, Kimani Vidal.
Yeah. Who's the defense?
Giants.
Everybody. Who's the defense? Everybody. All the running backs are putting up all the 30-point games against right now.
Oh, Miami.
He played Miami last week. So what we're starting to see now is not, Kimani Vidal is going to be like a 20-point guy every week, which I didn't think he was. I still don't think he is. I think he's going to be fine. But
we should have learned I'm just going to say this. We should have learned our lesson with JCM and with Woody Marks, but we thought third time was going to be the charm for Kimani Vidal, of all people. I think the lesson learned here is, number one, vacated volume does not imply that the next guy up is just going to score the same amount of points every single week after he drops the first week, like 20-plus points.
Yeah.
For a guy like Kimani Vidal and his skill set, like that obviously was not going to continue on, and you shouldn't have expected that.
He's still going to be the lead guy there, though.
He is still
now. Here's the thing, though.
Exactly.
I've been looking at this a little bit, where everybody else has him ranked. Other experts have him ranked on the site, because
this was not a game script for Vidal.
It wasn't, but it doesn't matter. It's just how is he going to be that? He's not going to be as productive as he was against Miami every week. That's his ceiling, and it's 22 points. But let's look at where he's actually ranked. Like, how do people actually value him? Rest of the season, Kimani Vidal is running back 35. He's next to somebody like Rashad White, Tony Pollard, Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson, Travion Henderson. I think that's probably appropriate. I think that's about where I would go. Like, I mean, because realistically, he's only a 4-week rental at most at this point, and you're only going to be putting in your last flex spot, in my opinion, at best. And so, I think, are you paying for 2 weeks of Rashad White or 4 weeks of Kimani Vidal? I think it's about the same, to be honest with you. Isaiah Pacheco's right there. Ramondre Stevenson is still close, which is absolutely bananas to me. But you got Trey Benson. You've got like I mentioned, Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey are there. I think if you can get anybody like this, I think if you can get even Pollard, probably, maybe not Pollard, but Ramondre for sure, Rico Dowdle for sure, Jordan Mason for sure, Pacheco and Pollard are maybes for me. I would be comfortable making that move. I'm going to go soft sell for Kimani Vidal.
I would go soft sell as well.
I don't think he's going to be like a slam dunk dynamite guy for your flex spot every week. And you might as well get somebody you can actually flex potentially into the playoffs as well. Yep. And so just see what you can do there from a deal standpoint. But I just, again, we're starting to learn that everybody crushed it against the Miami Dolphins. I think Kimani Vidal is going to have good games, but I don't think it's going to be like a dynamite flex spot guy like you thought he was going to be after the Miami game.
Yeah. Jaylen Warren is someone that I think a lot of people took a while to kind of warm up to, because it was like, okay, when is Gainwell going to start eating into this work? Since Jaylen Warren went down with that injury, Gainwell had a 30-point game. They came back after the bye week. It was looking like a decent split between the two of them. But actually, when you looked at the advanced metrics, you're like, okay, Warren was definitely looking to be the guy there. And then he goes up against Cincinnati and he just balls out. And granted, do you want to take every matchup against Cincinnati's defense with a grain of salt? Same with like running backs against Miami, who we just talked about with Vidal. But Jaylen Warren, I think, at least according to expert consensus, like everyone on the site is definitely finally adjusted to where he should be ranked. And that's like a mid to low end running back too. He's RB 18 right now, where previously the last couple of weeks, he was like on the fringe of low end running back 2, high end running back 3. He has kind of moved up a tier. Right now, he's back to back with Hampton. Look, if you're 5-1 right now, looking to be 6-1, and you want to take an upside shot on Hampton, who's going to be back in a few weeks, I honestly wouldn't mind if you just wanted to pivot from Warren to Hampton. But as far as like Breece Hall and Etienne are concerned, I think he deserves to be right there. I would prefer DeAndre Swift over Warren though. So again, I think it's going to become like personal preference within that tier, but I don't necessarily think that Jaylen Warren's a sell. I think he's going to be a solidified running back to rest of the season. I would not take an upside shot on anyone else below him, a tier below, because I don't think there are any upside shots to be had there. I don't think Alvin Kamara has the upside that we thought he was capable of having. I don't think JCM is going to be consistent enough, and his upside is the same as Jaylen Warren's. Monty's a 2, J.K. Dobbins in a situation where it's just kind of up and down every single week. Chase Brown in a terrible situation for what you were expecting from him to start the season. Like, I think I would just hold Jaylen Warren here. Probably can't buy at this point. If you were to buy Jaylen Warren, it would have been over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I don't mind his current price right now.
I honestly think you maybe still could buy Jaylen Warren.
Did you go soft buy with him?
I will, because I don't think I don't think his performance has been like dynamite enough to where people are like, yeah, there's no way I'm selling him. And also, I still think there are a lot of people that are skeptical about Jaylen Warren. So I'm going to say soft buy. I think it's worth sending feelers for Jaylen Warren, because I don't think he's a guy that people are always like, yeah, look, I'm definitely in for Jaylen Warren. So, all right. There you go. Hopefully that helps you with some of the hottest names in fantasy football. Do us a huge favor. Drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed as well if you play fantasy football. We'll have, of course, another video for you, another 2 videos tomorrow. We appreciate you. Thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll see you here soon.